Where in your life have you been living on autopilot when your wisdom has been quietly inviting you to choose something different? Welcome to Intuition, Your Joy Compass. This is the podcast where intuition gets embodied and joy leads the way. This is where we integrate your humanness and your soul. They don't have to compete and they don't have to work against each other. Your soul comes in with joy. Your human self wants to learn joy. It just makes sense to merge them. I'm Vicki Baird, your intuitive guide, and also your wisdom-led mindset coach. And I want to bring the truth that you do not have to transcend your human experience to feel lit up and to feel aligned. You need to integrate it. And that is what we will do here. Hi there. Thanks for joining me today. And you may have noticed with the podcast that there's a slight shift in content, not a big one, because, hey, what you see is what you get with me, but more of an invitation and an encouragement to live this human life more on purpose, with awareness, with consciousness, with presence, with fun, adventure, curiosity. I don't think personal growth is about becoming someone new or the future version of yourself even. I think that's misleading. I feel like it's about becoming conscious enough to choose your life instead of unconsciously repeating it. So instead of being in those patterns that just kind of hijack your brain and take you off, pretty soon you don't even realize you've been kidnapped. Anybody know what movie that came from? It was a good one. Jeff Bridges, give you a clue. But in this moment, each moment, we have the ability, and we should take the moment to choose to become very conscious about how we're living life. Because truthfully, I have learned that awareness creates choice, but it's choice that creates change. And until your brain and your system and your electrical wiring knows that you have a choice, it's going to keep defaulting to the previous pattern. It's how it's wired. We needed to learn where the, poisonous snake lived, or what flowers not to eat, or that group down the street. Well, there weren't streets then. The group 3 caves over that weren't helpful to us. We had to know that. We had to put that in our filing system somewhere, and we've just kept that capability. And I would love for you to become more curious, more conscious and present about your life and ask, why do I do that? I don't want you to do it from judgment. Never want you to do it from judgment. I want you to do it from curiosity. And one of the most important questions that I believe as a being, as a human, and as a soul we can ask is, why do I do that? And do you notice the inflection? It's not, why do I do that? It's, why do I do that? What makes me tick? Like, what is it in there that is encouraging me or causing me sometimes to react in the way that I'm reacting, or to be in the way I'm being? I believe that the deepest, most fulfilling lives come from becoming conscious enough to choose your life instead of unconsciously repeating it. One feels like pressure. The other one feels like freedom. It feels like the ability to dance. If I had rhythm, I would dance. So I dance inside myself. And because it's just not safe for the rest of you on the dance floor for me to break out into something. Your autopilot is efficient, I'll give you that. Until it's not. Our brains love patterns. I love patterns. I love being able to see within someone why they're doing what they're doing, and then help them find the pathway to what they would like to do. Our brains like patterns because it saves energy. It's incredibly efficient. Did you know, little sidebar here, did you know that when most people will say this house is haunted, it's not actually haunted? It's got an energy pattern of whomever lived there or took up space there. It's got the energy pattern of that being. So each time you follow your routine at night, like the cats get a little treat at 10 o'clock, the dog goes out, then we come upstairs, he gets a little in the night treat, the kittens take a couple of his treats, then you do the bedtime preparations, then you put the cream on your feet, then you read a couple chapters, and you uh, make it about 10 minutes before you pass out. Like, those are all the patterns. Well, that's my pattern of bedtime. This house holds that energy. And if someone doesn't clear it on a regular basis, which sometimes I forget, that pattern would stay. So someone coming back and doing, even EMF readings and things would be like, oh, there's an energy here. Well, yeah, there's an energy there. It's called residual for a reason. It just hung around. So your brain also has that wiring, that type, because it becomes efficient. You don't have to think about every step. You still have to do it, but I don't think about, okay, now I'm walking up the steps. Okay, now there's Buzz's face right in my face because he knows no personal space. So I come to the top of the stairs and there's his face with his hot breath breathing on me. I don't think about those things. So we just go through it. And it's efficient because if we had to think about every little thing, it would be incredibly anxiety producing. And yes, I know that there are some that unfortunately have this wiring and have to work pretty hard at getting it to not be in charge. But speaking in a general sense, our brains automate what they can. And the challenge is that they don't just automate the kind of mundane thing, point A to point B, driving home from the store you go to often or from work. They also automate relationships and reactions and beliefs and stress. Even the stories we tell ourselves. Oh, the conversations. Hi, how are you? How do you like this weather? La 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 la. Ugh, boring. But we get into an automated pattern because there's something comforting about that. And there's something very programmed about that. And it's okay. Again, none of this is ever all one way or the other. We are an amalgamation of all of our experiences. So have you ever caught yourself saying something your mother used to say? Oh, I remember doing that once when Kayla was younger, and I said something and she just looked at me and I was like, yeah, I heard it. I'm sorry. And I dialed it back and then, communicated in a less dictatorial way. But I heard it. Ooh, came right out. Or reacting exactly how your father did, or repeating, what somebody might have said at work. Or sometimes it can be fun. I've picked up ways of saying things that my girlfriends have. And they vice versa. When I hear one of my lines like "Lordy" come out of somebody, it just makes me giggle. And that's fun. Like, that's community building. That's having a connection. But we also want to recognize that there's a choice, and it might become automated at first, but then we have a choice to say things in the way other people say them, or to repeat, or to pick up on other people's energy. We do have mirror neurons that if you're around somebody and they happen to be, I don't know, a hyper communicator, you might find yourself talking a little bit faster and covering and cutting in on people's conversations, everything. That's a neural pathway mirroring that happens. You also have a choice to recognize when that's happening to stop it. I actually said to someone the other day, I was making an observation of someone else, and I said, "Do they always talk over you like that?" And she said, "Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating." And then what the hell did I do? I interrupted what she went to say, but I stopped myself immediately and said, "Oh my goodness," I almost said her name. Oh my goodness, I just did the same exact thing. I apologize. Please finish your sentence and I will shut my mouth. That's the beautiful part. You can notice it, and I call myself on it. Like, I very often to Mike, I'll say, "I'm sorry, I didn't let you finish the sentence." And just to rewire, because that is something that happened in not only my household, my late husband was a lot like that. And it's not a failure when you do that, it's being human. But we do have to activate a choice. Once you observe that you're doing it, there has to be an action to it. It can't just be, "Oh, I saw that, and so what? I'm not gonna do it again." You will do it again, because until you lay down a new pattern, the old pattern is not going to leave. It's just wiring. Stop taking this stuff so personally. You're not broken, your brain's not broken, and when it comes to that, stop talking to yourself that way. But this is one of the reasons that I love neuropathway work and positive intelligence, because it gives a language to something that I've seen in coaching for years. But hello, the stuff that I walked around and did. People aren't intentionally making their lives harder. I know it looks like that sometimes, but they're running old programs. They're running old saboteurs. They're listening to the judge. Maybe they have the full Supreme Court in their head. And none of these voices or saboteurs and stuff are inherently bad. They're trying to help, but the problem is that they often respond to a life that you no longer live, especially if you're listening to podcasts like this, or you're in coaching yourself or therapy, good for you, or if you're becoming more aware of your daily actions and how you are in the world. They're responding to who you were. The brain learned those strategies. Your brain learned those strategies decades ago. And, like myself, I've been around for quite a few decades. So it's reinforced it. And most of the stuff that we are reprogramming, we learned before we were 7 years old. And I don't know about you, but I didn't have a say in anything when I was 7 years old. So it's simply doing what it's set up to do, and it doesn't realize that you've grown, that you've had more birthdays, that you have awareness. And it takes pausing, observing. If you're with someone safe, please say it out loud so you both hear it, of what you just did that you are working on changing, because you can't choose what you can't see. You can't choose to change what you can't see. That's a very awkward statement. But until you learn to see things, you can't choose to change them. Oh my goodness, I'm just digging us in deeper. I'm going to move on. This is this is where your spidey senses, your intuition, your psychic ability can come in. This is where your soul knowing can come in. I I I know intuition doesn't exist to predict the future. Those are somewhat parlor tricks because there's so many variables. I stopped giving time frames because I could see that something would had like 98% chance of happening, but then if you don't get your butt off the couch, that's got a 0% chance of happening. And I was tired of being told. I was tired of the date changing, not necessarily being quote unquote wrong, but I had to recognize I'm not in charge of the people that I'm reading for. I'm not in charge of their lives. And I say that now when I meet people. What I see is there and a possibility. You have to make it a probability. Our intuition is not there to predict the future. It there to interrupt repetition. It's there to go, "Hey, Vic, you said you didn't want to cut people off anymore. What's another way that you could do that?" It whispers, it doesn't yell, which is also another reason that we have to get quiet. What's another way that you can do it? Pause. Call the person instead of having a face-to-face. Take a moment. Don't send that email. Rest. Speak up. Will you please forgive yourself? The good news is your intuition doesn't have to try to keep you safe, so it's not on guard. The brain already has that job. It's like, don't worry about it. Left brain is like, I got this. You don't have to worry about being afraid. Well, I nailed that. But your intuition is doing, it's helping you become more fully yourself because it's a part of you and it wants a place in the room. And that's a very different job description, is a very different assignment. The stressed part of you, the subconscious part of you is asking, geez, will I survive this? I don't know if I can survive this. And your right brain, your intuitive self says, can I be true to myself? Will I be true to myself? And I know we need both. We need both. We can't walk around oblivious that there are some dangers or that it's helpful to be aware of the patterns of others. But we also owe it to our souls and our happiness to be true to ourselves, to be willing to ask the question mid-conversation of, is this serving me? Is this conversation going anywhere? I have a choice of whether I can leave this relationship or I can stay in this relationship. I have a choice about whether I keep talking to myself like I'm adult or DOLT, not adult, like I'm an idiot, or I can choose to talk to myself because I know I have intelligence and I'm going to honor that part of you. I know this isn't easy. I absolutely know this isn't easy. There are days where you will be so freaking tired of yourself. There are days where I was like, Vicky, shut up. Just shut up. But eventually, when you work on this, it quiets. And one of the things I love about being consistent in the practice of recognizing how I'm speaking to myself was and is, because it's a work in process, is realizing I don't have to keep repeating every pattern I inherited. I don't have to keep those rules or those beliefs simply because I was exposed to them, or because I thought they were right 2 years ago, and now I have more information, and I don't believe them now. I mean, you're absolutely permitted to change your perspective, especially with some research and some education around a topic. Please do. Please do. Please get the education and do the research, and don't just believe the first thing that pops up on the Google machine. Thank you very much. But you get to choose each moment, and it can't all happen at once. Your brain would probably explode if it kept happening all at once. It happens one conversation at a time. Perhaps you recognize that there's someone in your environment that talks to you like one of your parents did. And you can recognize that, you can see that that's the case, and you choose not to be reactive to it. And you choose to stand your ground, or you choose to have boundaries, because it happens one conversation at a time, one pause, one new response. Heck, one courageous decision. Maybe you go through that process and recognizing that, this is just like my family dynamic. I have repeated a pattern in this workplace or volunteer gig or relationship, whatever it is. I've repeated this pattern. I see it now. I choose to change that because I'm not doing this again. There's no anger or resentment to the original one bringing that information. But there's also no anger or resentment towards yourself of where you are, because thankfully you have expanded and you have grown, or you wouldn't see it. Like these things that you're discovering about yourself, your patterns, you wouldn't see those if you didn't spend a bit of this time growing and understanding who you are. And I feel that that requires celebration. And that's how you get the life changes. Someone said to me the other day, I want your life. And I said, well, you can't have it. I have busted my ass and sometimes my brain and sometimes my heart to have the life I have. You can't have my life. But you know what? You can have your life. And let's look at what your life would look like. So it's okay to look at others for inspiration, but it's not about becoming someone else. It's not about being influenced to be someone else. It's about embracing who you are, learning to love that, stop abandoning yourself by standing still, look at the process and look at the patterns that you've created and decide to change them. Because when you become aware enough to choose, it's calming. It suddenly, most of life makes sense. And it affirms why we may be here in the first place. So let me leave you with this in this moment. It's not homework, it's not something to accomplish. You know, I love to ask questions. It's part of the coach wiring. You have to be willing to ask questions. Where in your life have you been living on autopilot? When your wisdom or your intuition has been quietly inviting you to choose something different? Where in your life have you been living on autopilot? When your wisdom has been quietly inviting you to choose something different? Notice what that is and choose to make a micro movement. Choose to move one thing, just one thing. And to be clear, that one thing can be your awareness. You can say, oh yeah, I've been living on autopilot when it comes to my nutrition, and I want to change that. Well, I already did. I just became aware that that's where I've been living on autopilot. Now your next change might be actually drinking the water you put in your water bottle. Mike and I have that conversation often. I'm like, this is just your water that you take to and fro. Do you ever consider drinking it? Choices, people, choices. So I very much hope you have a beautiful couple of weeks until we talk again, and keep noticing, because awareness has a funny way of changing everything, and it creates that choice, but your choice is what creates change. So go ahead and wake up to the life you're already living, if you choose to. Hey, that's up to you too. And I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Intuition, Your Joy Compass. I'm so grateful you are here, and I'd just like to leave you with what I would consider a listening agreement. By listening to this podcast, you agree to stay open, curious, and connected to your own intuition. You agree to take what resonates and throw out the rest into your body, into your breath, and into your lived experience. You agree to honor your humanity, trust your soul's voice, and let joy guide your next step. This is not passive listening, and this is not toxic positivity. This is conscious receiving. Thank you so much for being here.